I mean, obviously, you see, I have a finance background, so I'm a very, call it rational, numbers-driven person from the outset. And I used to believe that good strategy always wins.
Okay.
That for
Everything
me was
can be planned.
Logical strategy and, data. As long as you've done your homework, on those two things, it will work. Well, I've learned, actually that I need three things.
Okay.
And that's strategy. So I do need strategy. I need culture. And I need execution. And all those threes, that triangle needs to work in harmony. Now, I do want to mention something because it's being published a lot. People talk a lot about it, and it's often said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, that's a common term that you hear a lot. I do have a more nuanced view, okay? I balance strategy with stakeholder engagement. That's the way forward. Think about a team that has perfect culture. Everybody, loves, what they are doing, etc., but they don't know where they're going. Okay. No strategy. Okay. Well, that's, unfortunately also not necessarily so successful. Yeah. Or the team, has great culture, again, great harmony, but when it comes to getting things done, there are not that many people that do it really well. So again, that doesn't get you very far. So you really need those three. Yeah. So it is strategy, culture, and execution.
Welcome back to Intangiblia. Today, we are sitting down with someone who doesn't just sit on boards, she reshapes them. Heidrun, sorry for my German is very bad. Heidrun Wechter-Essig has restructured empires, closed M&A deals with the same ease as ordering a cocktail, and transformed companies from the inside out with grace and grit. She worked with P&G, Coty, Climeworks, but behind the titles lies a strategist who makes the complex look chic and the impossible inevitable. If you ever wonder what it takes to lead through chaos, integrate AI without the hype, or translate governance into real-world value, grab your espresso or your espresso martini, your metrics, and maybe a mirror, because we are about to get radically real about business transformation, leadership ego, and whether power heals really do help close a deal. Welcome.
Well, thanks, Letitia, for the brilliant introduction, and thanks for having me in your show. So I guess I will introduce myself.
Please go ahead.
So my name is Heidrun Wechter-Essig, and that's a German name indeed. I advise private equity and venture funds, and I also sit on boards, 3 boards currently, one of them in climate tech, and 2 of them active in the AI space. And they really focused on putting AI to work. To help companies get better and gain a strategic edge. So those are, the AI-focused companies. Now, as you mentioned, I have held senior CFO and strategy positions in publicly traded companies for a long time in Procter & Gamble, then in Coty. Then I've worked also as CFO in private equity-backed ventures. And actually, really focusing on lifelong learning, I have gone back to school. And I have focused over the last few years in diving much deeper into, I would say, governance of technology and AI. And we will obviously get into that a little bit during our session.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So you never stop learning.
No. I mean, that's something that I believe is necessary. And I mean, I enjoy it. I believe in today's fast-changing world, it's absolutely necessary that we stay sharp and that we continue to explore and learn and grow. I guess that's really what some people call the growth mindset, but I believe it's very true.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And how did you land here in Geneva, in Switzerland?
Well, I have actually taken remote courses. So I've studied at US universities. I've also gone for formal training on governance at a Swiss university in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. But I do surround myself actually a lot with real strategy and technology talent.
Yeah.
And we have a very active scene actually here in Geneva as well. We have a wonderful startup scene. So one of the companies whose board I joined recently is actually a company born in Geneva.
Ah, Genova.
Correct.
Perfect. So now let's dive into the questions. What is a corporate term you secretly wish we could delete forever?
Yeah, I thought about it, and what always comes to mind is the term transformation.
Oh,
And that's probably interesting for you to hear from me, who is very heavily into transformation. But I feel it's overused, and it often sounds like something that's done to people and not with people.
okay.
And in my experience, people respond far better when you give them tools, clarity, and support to adapt, improve, and find breakthroughs. And that's how I would like to actually frame the transformation work that's being done.
So to engage the people that are in the center of the transformation.
Exactly. I mean, I find transformation, when you hear it, you're going to be transformed. It feels a little, I don't know, not so comfortable.
Yeah, of course.
But if I talk about, let's, innovate, find breakthrough, let's enhance, let's get better, that's a much more engaging conversation that we will have.
Yeah, makes sense. It's like you're part of the process. It's not something is going on you. It's going to happen with you.
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Perfect. That's a beautiful way of thinking it. So imagine you walk into a struggling boardroom. No one knows what to do. What is the very first question you ask them? Not the polite one, the real one.
So I will first start with some general questions before I get into maybe the real question. I mean, the first couple of questions that I will ask are general questions that will not be so controversial. And that is first asking, how does the board see its role vis-a-vis, for example, the executive team, but also vis-a-vis other stakeholders? And the other question I will ask is, how does the board make decisions? So by which process does the board arrive at a decision? Once we have established that, then I might ask questions a little bit more around, are there things we should be talking about, but we are not talking about? Maybe because they are uncomfortable or political or too uncertain, because that obviously then gives me a further way into the real topics that we should at least think about, and it opens up. I would say when you enter a boardroom, you obviously need to gain trust first. So I would generally always ask the first questions that are general, but then eventually, depending on how the dynamic of the board team evolves, I would ask those questions, and they really are liberating.
Okay, so you ease them in. You start with the easy questions, and then you just put on the boots a bit after.
Yes, that would be the strategy, indeed. Indeed.
And what is a transformation strategy you've seen everyone fall in love with that actually doesn't work unless you got a unicorn team?
So I thought the question was very interesting because you mentioned a unicorn team. So that means obviously these, water walkers, high performers, etc. And if I were to answer the question specifically with that in mind, then I would say the transformation strategy that's called agile everything will not work with normal people, okay? It may work with the unicorns, by the way, even there. I'm not exactly sure that it will always work, but, unicorns can maybe find their way. They are, able to, independently find solutions.
They're more resilient.
Yeah, more resilient. But I would say even there, by the way, trust, decision rights, and alignment is kind of helpful, even if it's a small team. For sure, in larger companies, in larger environments, agile everything is a little bit overhyped. Now, I did want to also talk about what's the classic mistake that's being made, in transformation strategies. And you heard me talk about that already earlier, and I feel quite strongly about it because I've seen, successful and also failed efforts. And what I've seen is the classic mistake is that top leaders design a transformation plan in isolation. So they sit in a corner office and develop the plan. They roll it out. They say to the organization, this is now what you will do.
No.
And then they think execution will follow. Well, it doesn't. Because you can't really mandate belief. And that's something we talked about already earlier. I mean, you just can't force people to believe something. So if you come and you say, this is the transformation strategy, now go execute, there's a high chance that you will only get partial results, suboptimal results, or even no results. So that's really another one that I wanted to highlight, actually, as a key trap.
Yeah, so the person sits in his corner, does all the work, and then expects everything to magically happen.
Exactly.
Which is not the case.
Exactly. Now, you are coming, obviously, from a country that I would imagine is quite agile, right? In the way it solves problems and so on. So but it's really, even in, more, call it hierarchical societies, people like to at least understand the, where, the why, and the how. And they and in order to understand these things at a deeper level, it's not enough to just hear once. So that's why it's helpful to involve people.
Yeah, to engage them in from the brainstorming until the execution.
Exactly.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And you've seen 50 plus mergers and acquisition deals. Please give us the most underrated signal that a merger's going to flop before the ink dries.
So before I give you the most underrated signal, I want to give you the top signal.
The top, the
top signal.
Big red flag.
The big red flag, exactly. And I would say it's hubris.
Oh.
And, it's often combined with a lack of understanding of the specificities of the business model or the capabilities of the target company. So that's the top, I would say, issue I see, that deal teams come in, they say, they don't know what they are doing. We know better.
Okay.
And of course, there is always an improvement plan when an M&A deal is done, and it needs to be, because that's how, the value gets created. But it is really very, very dangerous to come in with the idea, I will know it better. And so that's why I say hubris is probably the most common, the top reason why M&A deals do not always go according to plan. And that, of course, then also combined with, a few other factors, not having done the homework as deeply. But let's come to the underrated one, because you asked underrated. So I was thinking about, what's underrated, and the one thing that did come to mind, and I've seen that in my practical experience, is actually when there is not so much clarity about the what will not get done and the hard trade-offs, on what you might deprioritize. And that's often a precursor to poor integration planning because, people just, run, try to get everything done, which typically results in suboptimal integration plans.
Yeah.
You also have this as a symptom of political fear, so if two cultures are coming together and people don't openly say, well, we're not going to work on this, let's only work on that, that can also be, underrated sign, also can show internal power struggles, and also can be a subtle precursor of powerful future misalignment. So so we have the top and then we have the underrated.
Yeah.
So the underrated is lack of choices. The top one is hubris, thinking that you know better.
It will be like a snowball effect because they will start like very small little problems here and there, but you have seen it in practice that they start small, but they end up breaking the cultural, breaking the dynamic in the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, M&A deals in general are complicated.
Yeah.
They are risky. And so, of course, a lot of work is being done on due diligence. And I mean, we have, great teams that, really dig deep. And despite that, sometimes, these types of things that I was mentioning earlier, which have a little bit more to do with the mindset and behavioral attitudes are just as important, actually, and they are harder to spot.
Yeah, of course, because they're underrated.
Yeah, and they're not on a checklist, you see. You have all the due diligence checklists. You have, okay, we've done the tax due diligence, we've done the IP, we've done,
the legal.
Exactly, we've looked at the books, financial due diligence. So all of that is very structured, but these things are less structured.
Yeah, so that's hard to spot. So, and also it requires for you to have a deeper understanding of the organization, of the people involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you learn by doing. I mean, hubris that I was mentioning before is not intentional, typically. It comes through a lack of understanding of maybe some of the intricacies of the business. But then also a firm belief that one can do it better.
Yeah, perfect sense. And let's see. What is something you believe as a young executive that experience totally destroyed and what replaced it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you see, I have a finance background. So I'm a very, call it rational, numbers-driven person from the outset. And I used to believe that good strategy always wins.
Okay.
That
everything can be planned.
Logical strategy and, data. As long as you've done your homework, on those two things, it will work. Well, I've learned, actually that I need three things.
Okay.
And that's strategy. So I do need strategy, I need culture, and I need execution. And all those threes, that triangle needs to work in harmony. Now, I do want to mention something because it's being published a lot. People talk a lot about it, and it's often said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, that's a common term that you hear a lot. I do have a more nuanced view, okay? I balance strategy with stakeholder engagement. That's the way forward. Think about a team that has perfect culture. Everybody, loves, what they are doing, etc., but they don't know where they're going. Okay. No strategy. Okay. Well, that's, unfortunately also not necessarily so successful.
Yeah.
Or the team, has great culture, again, great harmony, but when it comes to getting things done, there are not that many people that do it really well. So again, that doesn't get you very far. So you really need those three.
Yeah.
So it is strategy, culture, and execution.
Yeah, of course, because you can have a great plan, great people, but if you don't execute it, then nothing happens. Or you can have great people with great execution, but they're executing things that are without a plan. So they it could lead to great success out of luck or a big disaster.
It could, yeah, exactly. Take them, in the wrong direction. Absolutely.
Yeah,
executing the wrong thing really well.
Yes, exactly. You did perfectly, but that perfect execution now damaged the whole organization.
That is exactly it. So that's what I've learned in my professional experience.
Okay, so the triangle.
Yeah, I like to think of a triangle.
And what is the most overhyped thing you've heard about AI in the boardroom? And what is the one who no one is talking about enough?
So, AI in general is, by the way, a big topic. So I would start out with saying that I would prefer people be a little bit more specific when they talk about AI, because that's already, I find, where some of the confusion starts. But let's keep it simple for now. I would say the most overhyped thing is that AI will solve problems independently, autonomous, and it'll just, get things done. That's quite heavily hyped these recent months. We are starting to talk about artificial general intelligence and all of these things. And it's also, very much hyped that AI will then solve bias, because obviously it is, trained on data and therefore there will be no bias. Well, AI gets trained on historical data. And if the historical data is biased and or not a good prediction for the future, AI may not necessarily solve your problem.
Exactly, because it's not a magical reasoning know-it-all. It comes from data, from what you feed the machine.
Absolutely.
So if you feed it wrong data, then it's going to come out with wrong outcomes.
Absolutely. And that's something that is, I would say, overhyped, that AI can solve everything. What's underhyped, in my opinion, is a more nuanced view of what AI can really do to gain strategic edge. Few companies and few boards have yet fully understood in which areas it can really help them make better decisions, or, accelerate maybe innovation, or execute better, or also, of course, become more efficient. The more efficient part, incidentally, is one that we want to see, but I would say the other ones, which is, how do I innovate better? How do I make better decisions? How am I more focused, maybe on my target market, etc., are really the ones where I can do quite a lot if you use it well. And that's not yet very well understood.
And for that, you need to really understand your company. You need to really understand how it works and see what is the benefit of automating that, of making the AI work for that, and what is also the consequences. What you're going to lose if you do this change, because that's often what a lot of people doesn't realize. Whenever you transform or change or implement a new way of working, that means there's going to be consequences, either by the people that were working in that position or working in that task, or the team itself, or the way also the consumer is going to see the product. So there's a lot of things that can really change that are not necessarily part of the thinking plan of the person doing the decision, making the decision.
Absolutely. And I think you're mentioning a point that is dear to my heart, which is things are never static. We have interaction between a lot of different things in the world. And therefore, it is really problematic to take a static view as you then think about also making changes through AI. And an example would be, and I've been asking that question early on in my board circles, because I'm part of several of those board circles and networks, which is, but if everybody implements the same type of AI, what's the strategic edge for the company, right? So you really, is it then about execution? Is it about one company doing it really much better than another? But what does really much better mean? If you have the same basic model that you're drawing from, right? So I think those are the questions indeed that need answering, and also a little bit more of a forward thinking. Though I will say AI is beautiful in scenario planning. It's doing, I would say, a better job putting a lot of different variables together if you train it right, and gives you then these scenarios. What you need the AI to do if you want to make a decision on it, it needs to explain to you which assumptions it has taken for those different scenarios and, how they hang together. So it's this explainable AI that you want to have.
Yeah, of course, because you need to understand how it came to that decision, because it may look like a great decision, but if it took the wrong assumptions, then it doesn't make sense in reality.
Exactly. And even if you have scenarios, let's say, we have a optimistic, pessimistic scenario or whatever, or scenarios of different things happening, you need the AI to explain to you how it got there.
Yeah, of course. Explain.
Yeah, exactly.
The train of thought.
Yes.
Do you think AI literacy is now as critical as the financial literacy at the board level? Or are we still pretending we can outsource the hard questions?
We'll be back after a quick break.
AI is changing the game of business. Will you be on the winning team? I'm Jordan Wilson, the host of the Everyday AI podcast, and your coach to help you learn the X's and O's of AI. Artificial intelligence isn't just a new player in the game, it's a new sport altogether. So if you don't quickly put AI into play, your competitors will run up the score. I've spent my whole life building winning teams, from coaching basketball to working with big players like Nike and Jordan Brand. My next move? Helping you win with Everyday AI. Listen wherever you get your podcasts or on everydayaipodcast.com. Let's tap into AI together and put points on the board.
I mean, it is clear that AI literacy is needed and more. I mean, we cannot outsource judgment, of course, but we need to use the tools that we have and in the right way. And so, I mean, as we think about board members are being expected, all of them, to read a balance sheet, they must also understand the different forms of AI, which I already talked about. So be a little bit more precise in their language. What is a large language model? What is machine learning? So at least when a specific topic comes up, people are not talking past each other. So that's the minimum. But they also must really understand how to measure AI-generated outputs. That's actually a strong focus area that I have in my AI-powered board roles. For example, how do we quantify data bias? How do we quantify model risk and explainability? And that's what board members need to understand. And I will give you even a more concrete example of one of the companies whose board I've joined recently. I mean, they are building solutions for the certification of aerospace and airplane parts.
Okay.
So it's certification, so a lot of documents, a screw, requires...
Are they regulated?
Very sector? Regulated, exactly. They need to comply with, of course, a lot of regulations, European or US, depending on the geography. And here, of course, what we want to simplify this. I mean, it's a really great tool to simplify the work of engineers because the AI can help a lot in the process of documenting and making sure, it's traceable and all of that. But we really need to get to a model accuracy that is close to 100%, 99% maybe. That would be an example where we have this language where we say, okay, this is what we need to be able to prove. But boards need to understand these things more generally.
Yeah, so it's very much needed for them to understand the implications, the output, everything regarding how the AI works and which kind of AI is better in different scenarios as well.
Exactly, absolutely. And so that indeed also when then an executive team comes and they lay out a plan, that the board can understand, what's the sequencing of the plan, which questions to ask, also maybe ask the right questions on risks and opportunities of the plan, diving deeper into that. It's really important that board members reach a certain level of fluency. It doesn't have to be perfect. You will maybe have one person that's got a higher level of fluency, but at least the basic fluency should be there.
At least to speak the language in a way that it can be understandable.
Exactly.
That's my approach with French.
There you are.
When you're leading change, how do you avoid becoming the flavor of the month instead of a game changer?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it already a little bit earlier, and I believe based on what we already talked about, I would say it's about capability, make the change about capability and not charisma, not, a wonderful presentation. Establish a mindset also, and I like that one a lot. We have not done this yet.
Oh.
Because that actually opens up doors, right?
Okay.
And communicate regularly and transparently on progress. That's very important as well, because that means, you're there to stay, right? And you go for early wins. You find out what's working and what needs improvement, and you take the feedback on board. That's how you how you embed change rather than making it flavor of the month. And then what you also, and by the way, when you listen to that, I mean, people understand that their feedback is actually valued. Yeah. Which is important because, again, change as flavor of the month. The boss has said this month, so we move in this direction, and then next month we move into the other direction is obviously what
sometimes
you want
conflicting.
to avoid. Sometimes conflicting. That's exactly what you want to avoid. So you really embed it. You really make sure it's about capability and all the other things I was talking about. Another thing that I found very, very helpful when driving change is that, I often have people that are passionate about doing something, so early adopters. And I want to really bring them on board as quickly as possible. And then what I want to do is I want them to tell the story of how they have been able to use maybe a certain tool or how they've been able to affect change. So I want to bring them up on stage potentially. And that makes other people much more curious than if the boss is saying, oh, now you need to do this, now you need to do that. That's like, your mother, obviously telling you what to do. And most adult people or teenagers already don't really react very well. But if I have, my peer, sort of talk about, well, this is really pretty interesting, I might be a bit more curious. And that's exactly what happens also in large change efforts.
And you can change the perspective because people get in the shoes of the other person and say, well, this is something that I can see from this side. It really makes sense. So they get excited about it as well.
Exactly. So those are some of the things that I've learned, along the way, how we make change stick.
And what is a board level decision you've made that felt risky at the time, but turned out to be the smartest move in the room?
Of course, we always like to, think of only the smart decisions we've made.
We're perfection.
By the way, it's equally as important sometimes to talk about the less smart decisions we've made. But let's talk about That's smart one that I feel, I've been a strong part of. And that was actually in a business where we were already market leader. So we had the leading brand. This was a branded products business. And we proactively disrupted ourselves and the status quo because we launched actually and expanded, our business into another brand, a lower price brand. So when you're the market leader, you have got the best brand, and so on. That is actually, can be a pretty risky move because you might actually sell the same amount for lower price. Okay, and that's risky. But there were a lot of elements that the team had thought about in terms of how to execute this such that it would add to the business. that felt strong, but it was still pretty risky. And in the end, what happened was indeed good execution, good strategy, good execution, good culture brought this all together. And this brand actually accelerated the growth of the business from historically 5% to 20%.
Oh.
And profit also grew in similar ranges. So you can imagine how beautiful of a decision this turned out to be.
Yeah.
We like that.
It's a memorable one. And you want to tell me a mistake then, since you said you learn more from mistakes?
That's good. I mean, yeah, look, sometimes I would say the mistake I've made is not maybe pushed hard enough for change when I already knew it had to happen. That's definitely, and by the way, many people say that, but it has also happened to me. For example, I mean, let's stay on the brand portfolio because we were on a brand portfolio here. A brand has limited chances to grow back, but you have a very engaged brand team that comes to you and says, we have an idea, we want to do this.
It's gonna turn things around.
Exactly, and you kind of. You in the depth of your heart, it's very unlikely that they can do it, and you still go ahead with it. So that would be the typical mistake I've made it for sure. I mean, of course, it also goes in other areas where this is not going quite the way it should, and we really don't always act on the instinct as quickly. And of course, what I will say is there is confirmation bias maybe also at play, because when you think about it afterwards, you say, I should have acted faster. Of course, that's always the trap that we need to also avoid, that we say, knowledge, hindsight is 20/20, right? That's what people say.
You're always wiser after.
Yes. But there are, you make mistakes. I mean, I think the critical thing, the philosophy that I've always liked to implement is, first of all, try to figure out the risk of decisions we are taking. Can we reverse them? What's the maximum, when it comes to financial, what's the maximum cash exposure that we have? And in an ideal world, you want to, spend a little and learn a lot. And even if you fail, I mean, be then ready to say, okay, this didn't work, cut it, and don't fall in love too much with the idea, which is what we were talking about. But it's really, really helpful to at least, then say, okay, we tried this, it didn't work. Why did it not work? Go a bit deeper into it, study it, and learn, build a culture where it's okay that we didn't get it right.
It's okay to fail. Just keep trying.
Exactly.
And what do people misunderstand about power in the corporate world? And how do you define it now?
Yeah, I mean, people confuse power with dominance.
Oh.
Most of the time, or very often. To me, and I've learned that over time because I've seen incredibly effective leaders that were not your standard big person.
The big person in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So real power is the ability to influence and to ensure that things get done with excellence, ideally. That's real power. And sometimes this also can mean that you need to get out of the way and let the right people do the work. Don't try to, micromanage, things. So that's that type of power is really helps you shape outcomes without showing your hand always. Yeah. And that's sometimes also what's underrated. I mean, people still very often think about the alpha male, leader. And sometimes that's necessary because people need to have this visible person in the room, particularly when there is, a lot of uncertainty and so on. Then you need to at least, be very visible, and you need to give people clarity. Certainty you most of the time cannot give them, but you can give them clarity. But in many cases, it's also helpful to really actually work, on different stakeholders to make things happen. That can be very powerful.
Yeah, and influence is the real power, as you were saying, is the ability to change people's mind, to push them forward, to even when there's no certainty, that they still feel the trust that they say, okay, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're going to try. As a team, we're going to keep pushing forward, and this is the connection that is shared among the team, and you can really tell when there's a influenced person, an influenced leader that can really push the team forward, even when there's nothing there's nothing on the horizon, so it's only darkness. So this is a beautiful way of seeing it, like really influence the team, influence the change, influence the mindset, inspire as well. I think that is really the power of inside leadership.
Absolutely. Indeed. Yeah. Not always the dominance.
Yeah, not always the big person in the room with the loudest voice.
Exactly.
And if AI could analyze your career like a data set, what would it probably get wrong about your impact?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about that, and probably AI would say I was optimizing outcomes because, I'm talking about track record and all of that. But actually, what it really was behind that is balancing contradictions. Really stability versus reinvention, where do you keep things stable? Where do you invest? Where do you innovate? That type of contradiction. How do you manage ego versus mission? Within teams, maybe. How do you manage control, which you need to have, versus entrepreneurial freedom, which you also want? So really, as we look at this, more sort of what's behind the curtain, I would say it's often managing these contradictions, using really all available experience, input, intuition, everything to make that happen. And then, you see the outcomes.
Yeah, makes sense. So it's not it's not the obvious typical answer. It's looking under the hood.
Exactly.
And let's talk governance. What is a rule, policy, or norm you've seen weaponized in ways that kill innovation?
Yeah, I mean, so I would like to use a term that hope it's a bit provocative, but I think it brings it to life. There is smart, complexity, and governance, and there is dumb, complexity, and governance. Okay, and what do we mean by that? Well, certain processes we need because, we have a duty to stakeholders, to shareholders, and we need to make sure and we need to understand our risks, and we need to focus on managing those risks in the best way. Dumb governance is that we manage all risks, all possible risks, whether they're big or small, in the same way, and then drive an enormous amount of complexity, which then obviously stifles, a company to go for innovation. And it comes a little bit back to what I was talking about earlier. You can think about maybe, taking a little bit more risk on something small. Okay, try it out, learn. You don't need to manage it with the same risk processes as, the really big risks that you have. So that's what I would say is really what I would say is sometimes, the outcome when governance get weaponized. So if you do it smart, then you put the guardrails in place, freedom within a framework, you focus on the big risks, you focus a lot on those. But if you don't distinguish, that's when you stifle innovation.
Okay. So make sure to understand and classify things accordingly and treat them as they are, not as you want them to be or wish them to be, but as they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. And what advice for leaders you will give who wants to feel in control but are entering markets or technologies where control is an illusion?
Yeah, so I think we already had a bit of that concept earlier, but I mean, let's bring it out more broadly. I would say you need to distinguish between controlling and containing.
Oh.
You cannot obviously command volatility. And I've worked, about 10 years in emerging markets. There's a currency that will collapse, from time to time in country X or country Y. And, you can't control that.
Mm-hmm.
What you can control or influence is obviously how you react to it.
Okay.
And you can set principles. Actually, it's a good idea to set principles up front. So that's what we talk about containment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for us in emerging markets, it was pretty clear that we would protect cash of the company very quickly.
Okay.
And we had certain, ways of doing that. And teams were prepared mentally that if such a thing would happen, okay, they go and execute. So containment was relatively clear. We would not, for example, when the currency devalues, sell at the same price, because we couldn't afford that. We would have made a lot of losses. Mm-hmm. We also had principles around we invest only up to X amount, a negative cash flow in country X or Y.
Mm-hmm.
And teams knew that if they went beyond that threshold, there would be no more investment because, of course, you often invest first before you get back a return. But being clear on what's the maximum that you're willing to go for and being clear upfront and explaining it to people, again, containing your risk so that you don't realize all of a sudden, half the company is
gone.
Is gone now. Exactly. That's really a good way, I would say, to manage uncontrollable markets. I mean, there are many others, but I would say that from a governance standpoint.
So risk management, mitigate risk according to what it is, and try to see a clear picture.
Yeah, and be prepared. Have principles already up front.
Okay.
So this is the idea about containment, saying, okay, this is the maximum I'm willing to go. This is the maximum I'm willing to lose. This is the procedure or the way I will act. If this, or this happens. I had situations happening in emerging markets where, for example, tax inspectors would come to a plant and, then asked, to be paid off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As a
under
favor.
The table.
Yeah, exactly. And we had, call it, upfront principles as to how to act in such a case.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that, people wouldn't be left, in a very stressful situation, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. So you contain, the risk up front. You say, okay, and you have maybe then support as well. But that's what you want to do. You don't want to be...
You don't want to panic in the moment, especially something like that, so delicate, because you say, well, if I do it, it is wrong. If I don't do it, we may be at risk. So it's a
you have a procedure. It sounds a bit too formal, but you have a process at least, where the person calls and but already knows, they will be protected, for example, that type of thing. That's a pretty extreme example, but it's one that I believe
it happens, and it can happen also in different ways, not necessarily in the way of an authority that can give you a lot of harm. It can happen also in other ways that can compromise your ethic or can compromise the company's well-being. And it's important to know that there is a way of dealing with it, and you are secure in a way. So it takes away the pressure of the individual that happens to have this issue at hand.
Exactly. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So no control, but containment.
Containment. I like that. I will think about that with my kids. No control, but containment. And what is a moment when you knew this isn't just about numbers, this is about legacy?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when former team members tell me that I've had a profound impact on their development and their careers.
Yeah.
I mean, those are, the moments when you realize it's actually really not about the numbers, it's about legacy. When people tell me, oh, actually, we observed you here, and that really helped us later in this particular aspect. Or, I mean, of course, sometimes they will also criticize me, but of course,
the good and the bad.
Generally, when people say, oh, but you really helped us here, those are legacy moments.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't realize it.
No.
When you're impacting people. And they come later to you and say, well, you really inspire me when you said this, or when you talk about that. And you get really touched when people reveal that to you, because it is not obvious. At least in my experience, I've never been in the moment when I'm doing the impact, I've never been aware that I'm actually doing the impact.
Exactly. And by the way, I mean, I will go also to the tougher side, and tell you an honest story as well on the opposite side. But it was wonderful still in the end. Some team member a few years ago came to me and said, we were very angry with you. And I go, okay, what have I done? And they said, yeah, people said you said yes to XYZ project. And it was so much work, and it really didn't make sense, and people just said, Heidrun said yes. And I said, oh my God, I didn't realize, this was, such an issue. And by the way, I don't even remember having said yes to it. I probably said in a meeting, and just, didn't object, said, okay, yeah, sounds like a good idea, and didn't really, engage deeply. But it was also a good sign because, people felt, and I thanked him. I said, thank you that you told me.
Yes, because they have the trust in you to be themselves and tell you the truth of what they thought about what happened. Because you have built a relationship with that person. So that's also tells that is a great working environment when your team is not afraid of coming forward.
Absolutely. But I also realized, the power, that was invisible to me, my power that was invisible to me, because me just maybe making a little side comment in a meeting, saying, oh yeah, sounds like good idea, would trigger something.
A chain of events.
Yeah. So it was great to have the trust of the team to tell me. It made me understand that I had perhaps more power than I thought I did, and that I needed to be conscious of that. And yeah, it of course, led to, good, moments, leadership moments further down the line.
Yeah, you learn, you grow, you adapt. Okay, now we're going to the game part of the podcast. First, we're going to have a flash section. So you need to pick one. You can justify if you want, but you don't have to. But also you can pick both, because that had happened many times that people love to pick both, or they pick none of them. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Transformation fatigue or reinvention adrenaline?
For me, it's reinvention adrenaline. I mean, you see, of course, I'm working, on the cutting edge of science.
And you're energized.
Yeah, and I'm still learning. So clearly that.
Perfect compliance or bold innovation?
It will be innovation. However, compliance is the floor on which you want to build, and innovation is the ceiling. Okay. So I do want to have compliance as the floor as well.
Okay, perfect. I like that. It's a very clear visual. Floor, compliance, innovation, ceiling. So you come from the floor up to the roof. Legacy company with issues or promising scale up with chaos?
Yeah, I mean, my trajectory shows that it will be the scale up. I mean, really enabling turning chaos into clarity is eventually, of course, quite exciting. I will say that I also appreciate helping companies that are struggling. But of course, the energy is different.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Trust the algorithm or challenge the assumptions.
Challenge the assumptions. We talked about that at length.
Yes, that's very clear. A strategy first or people first?
So I have to choose one. Now, we talked about a triangle already.
Yes.
So I have to choose one. It will be people first. However, you heard my theory around the triangle.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Private equity speed or public company scrutiny?
I mean, private equity speed, but with thoughtfulness.
Okay. Not just about profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Deal heat or due diligence calm?
So it is deal heat, but I really want to make sure that I can rely on thorough due diligence to make that deal.
So a combination.
Yeah, I need to have, great teams that do due diligence or part of that. Myself, I also dig deep, but I, of course, get the energy from the deal heat, of course.
Valuation boost or stakeholder trust?
Trust.
Always.
Yeah, valuation follows trust. I mean, in the end. I mean, not in the short term, maybe, but in the long term.
Yeah, it's what sticks around.
Yeah.
And finally, AI buzzwords or plain speak honestly?
Honesty.
Okay, now you take the palette of futurist and true or futurist. So you have to pick true in the case that the scenario is something that you think that is happening already, is part of our everyday life, or is about to happen. Then you pick futurist if you think that is something way in the future, it may never happen, or hopefully won't happen. Okay. Board members will be rated publicly by shareholders.
That is already partially true.
Okay. Executive teams will use biometric stress data to decide when not to make key decisions. Futurist.
Maybe one day.
Luxury brands would require a permit to use the term sustainable.
That's partially true already.
Yeah, it's already happening in regulation.
Yeah.
A board will reject a CEO candidate based on their digital footprint.
It's already happening.
Be careful what you post.
Absolutely.
ESG performance will be verified through autonomous auditing bots, not firms.
One day, maybe, but we talked about autonomous AI, co-pilots maybe soon. Autonomous, not yet.
Not yet. AI will be used to simulate shareholders' reactions to major decisions before the press release goes out.
Absolutely, it's already happening. You can do it today.
Yeah. Sharing a board will require formal certification in AI literacy and digital risk.
One day, maybe.
As AI populates more spaces.
Exactly.
A company's carbon footprint will appear on product packaging by law.
TimeWorks, of course, is into some of that.
The most valuable metric for investors will be how quickly a company admits it was wrong.
Generally true.
Yeah.
Of course, some exceptions, but generally true.
And finally, companies will be sued for performative innovation.
Futuristic. Now, they could be sued for bad capital allocation potentially, but that's still pretty far out.
Yeah. And it's also hard to measure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so final question of the day. If you could redesign the way boards create impact in the next 10 years, what would you change first?
Some boards are spending a lot of time on quarterly reviews and typically also looking at the past. in an ideal world, I'd like to see a little bit more strategic capacity building, maybe also think about the rhythm in a different way, although that's already changing. I mean, some boards are meeting more frequently and maybe shorter. Also, every board should include somebody who challenges and not necessarily disrupts to just
to make noise.
But there should be some uncomfortable questions asked, and it's important, ideally, to have that in a board composition. Also, as we're thinking about what is the ideal board composition, it should not just reflect experience. I've been the CEO of a company X for 30 years or CEO of company Y, but it should probably also reflect exposure to risk, to scale, to failure, and to emerging tech. And some of this we are seeing already today in board searches. But I think that helps then build judgment at the board level if you have a combination of these experiences.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for reminding us that leadership isn't just about numbers. It's about vision, agility, and knowing when to reinvent the playbook. Because in a world racing toward smarter everything, the sharper's edge isn't just tech, it's the people who know how to wield it. And sometimes the boldest transformation begins with a well-placed question and a fearless answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tisha.
Thank you for listening to Intangiblia, the podcast of intangible law. Plain talk about intellectual property. Did you like what we talked today? Please share with your network. Do you want to learn more about intellectual property? Subscribe now on your favorite podcast player. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Visit our website www.intangiblia.com. Copyright Leticia Caminero 2020. All rights reserved. This podcast is provided for information purposes only.